Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 340. Today we're going to talk about the Witcher adventure game, the board game. Now if you watch my channel, you'll know I did sort of a playthrough of the app. So this has been a simultaneous release, somewhat simultaneous release of the app and also on the PC and also of the board game. So this is published by Fantasy Flight Games, also marks CD Projekt Red, who is the publisher of the original straight-up adventure PC RPG video game. So if you're not familiar with the Witcher franchise, it is sort of, I guess you'd call it sort of a little bit darker of a fantasy. The main character in the game, and with the video game, is Geralt, and he's sort of a mutant type of character, augmented by potions and things, alchemy, sort of giving him special powers that he can use, and they're kind of sort of, I guess, like police or sort of like a secret service of the world. They kind of hunt down mysteries, kind of take out bad guys before they become too much of a threat and things like that. So let's jump into how this works. It is a competitive game, even though each of the four characters that you can play as, from my recollection of the video game, they kind of work on the same team for the most part. But you're definitely competing, and there is some sort of, it's called a support quest in this, so there's some sort of co-op elements, and you can actually trade and things. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in the review portion. So let's jump in, see how the game works, and then I'll tell you what I think of it. So in The Witcher, you're going to choose one of four possible adventurers, and each adventurer is going to get a little character sheet. And you can see here we have the character sheet for Geralt, and these character sheets are mostly identical. There's going to be a few distinguishing features. First, we can see here the starting location for Geralt as well as the starting gold, and we can see the characters also are represented by a little plastic miniature. In this case, we placed Geralt in his starting location. Now here we can see all of the different actions that a player can do on their turn. These are mostly the same for each character, except each character has one action that is unique to them. In this case, we can see here the brew action, which allows us to place one action marker on each of our potion development cards. And we can see here is the development deck for Geralt. The other thing to note about these character sheets is you can see here is a conversion rate. So going from left to right, we can see that Geralt can convert 3 of the red combat lead tokens into 1 clue token. He has a less favorable conversion rate when it comes to magic, which is 5-1, and then diplomacy, which is 7-1. This also notes what his success die looks like, as well as which quest deck he's going to pull quests from. And the main goal of the game is going to be traveling around, doing investigations, visiting different locations to get these lead tokens. You can see here are the 3 different colors. And then of course transforming, based on your conversion rate, those lead tokens into the actual clues. Finally, it should be noted that each of the characters has a different die or set of dice, but there are also 3 common combat dice that each player has access to. So the gist of the game is very much focused on those development decks. I showed you the Geralt development deck, and what you're going to be doing is sort of cycling through that, basically teching out or building out your character, and then going on different quests, doing investigations. Along the way, you're going to fight monsters, do different kinds of activities and things, little side quests possibly. And then you're going to either play till 3 quests or 5 quests is considered like an epic game. And then when the first player to complete 3 quests finishes their 3rd main quest, then each player gets 1 more turn, and then you're going to total up the number of victory points. So the main chunk of victory points comes through those main quests, but you can get them a few different ways. Sometimes some of the event cards, fighting different monsters, helping other people on their quests, doing side quests. So those aren't always the only way to earn victory points. Now the game feels a little bit like an adventure game, but it feels very much like a race game. So especially as you add more players, you're kind of plotting your routes on the map and figuring out where kind of the best ways to go do investigations or collect lead tokens, and maybe offer support to your buddies, quote unquote, and figuring all that out, and then kind of optimizing all of your action selection to get to the victory points the quickest. So let's jump into how a turn might work. So the first thing you're going to do before playing is draw 2 cards out of one of your legal quest decks. Remember, if we look at Geralt, his legal quest deck is the red deck. This is the combat deck. He's going to draw 2 cards out of that deck and then choose one. So there's a lot of information to consider on these quests here. So let's take a look at one. First thing you're going to want to look at is the main quest. Now here you can see this main quest will give us 12 victory points when we complete it. We need to take 1 magic clue token and 1 combat token to Shaerrawedd and turn them in. Each quest also has 2 side quests. We can see here the first side quest is very simple, and to complete this you just have to spend 3 of the red lead tokens at any time. And the second quest is very simply to go to Brokilon on the board. And very simply, once you move your character to Brokilon, you'll have achieved that quest. And at the bottom of the quest card you can see areas where you can mark these quests as completed. And you'll mark these and then you'll get the corresponding number of victory points. You also see that each quest has a support quest, and this requires somebody else to be in the same location as you and then spend the required amount of resources, in this case 3 blue lead tokens. And we can see here at the top of the board there's a space for each character to mark with the character token the type of resources that they are looking for in their support quests. So we've marked Geralt here on the blue token track, and then when somebody is in the same location as us and spends 3 blue lead tokens, we will get 3 victory points, but they will also get 6 victory points. So let's take a quick look at the board. As you can see, it's made up of a variety of different locations. Each location is going to have 4 spots, so each character can be in the same location if necessary. There's going to be routes between the different locations, and then you can see here the type of lead tokens that you acquire by moving to a specific location. Locations are grouped into different regions. We can see here Vizima has this orange sort of ninja star type of icon, and that's shared by Oxenfurt and Novigrad. And off the side of the board, there are places to hold tokens to show you what monsters and foul fates might be waiting for you there. So we can see here, this spot matches with the 3 locations I just showed you, and then now we've put a bronze or easy level monster there, as well as a foul fate token. To start the game, the 3 regions at the top of the board will each have a bronze monster token face down, and the 3 regions at the bottom of the board will each have a foul fate token. Now on a player's turn, they have 2 actions that they can do. And what you can do is you take the action and then move it over, marking that action, so you can't ever take the same action twice in a turn. It's also possible to become wounded, and when you get wounded, you have to choose one of your action slots and cover it with a wound token. And while that wound token is on there, you can't do that type of action. On the flip side of the wound tokens is a severe wound token, which is a little bit more serious than a regular wound. So let's go over the different actions in the game. Now the first action is to travel, and normally you just travel 1 space along your route, or you can do a fast travel and travel up to 2 spaces. But every time you do that, you have to draw and resolve a foul fate card, applying its consequences and then discarding into the discard pile. And it also should be noted that anytime you arrive at a destination, you're going to be able to take a lead token matching one of the colors shown on those spaces. It's also worth noting that sometimes effects will happen that force you to put a foul fate token on one of your actions, and then anytime you do that action you actually have to draw a foul fate token anyway. So it's feasible if you did a fast travel that you'd have to resolve a foul fate token from taking the action first, and then also because you traveled 2 spaces you would also resolve another foul fate token. So as you start the game out, it's not going to be too bad, but as you go along and fight monsters and foul fates are going to happen to you, then your board's going to fill up with wounds and foul fates. So you want to take actions to rest, to get rid of wound tokens, or other actions to get rid of some of the foul fates, or just go through and deal with them. Now if you ever have to add a wound token or a foul fate and there's no more room, then you're going to lose some victory points. So you do want to make sure that you keep those clear and off your board. The next action you can do is investigate, and there are 3 investigation decks that go along just the same as the quest deck. So there's a combat, magic, and diplomacy deck. And so on your turn you can do an investigate. You can draw a card from any of the decks that you wish. So being more combat oriented, let's say Geralt draws from the red deck, and now he has the option to spend a red token or become delayed. And here we've got another example here. This one you receive a red token, and then you can suffer a foul fate, which means add it to your player card, or you can fight a battle. And in this case we might have a little bit of a choice here, because if we're successful at the battle, you can see it says draw 1 good fortune card, and these more often than not are really good. So this might be something you want to kind of push your luck on. And sometimes you may get a task out of these investigation decks. So what you're going to do is keep this in front of you, and in this case you have to defeat a silver monster. It's kind of like a level 2 monster. And when you do that, you actually receive 2 victory points and a red token. So you might go look for some spots where you can trigger silver monsters and things on the board. And the next action here you can see is to develop. And you very simply draw 2 cards from your development deck, choose one, and then discard the other. So this is really the heart of the game, I feel. So as I said, each character has 4 completely unique development decks. So Geralt, he's a little bit more combat oriented. Triss is a little bit more magic oriented. Yarpen the dwarf has a little band of dwarves that he actually set those up, and you can kind of activate those to set activation tokens on your cards. And then Dandelion is more of a bard. He generates money and does things with money, kind of like playing concerts as he travels through the land. Now, as I've played the game, I didn't really think they were that drastically different, but you can kind of see how these development decks sort of interact with the different investigations, different quests, and there is a choice there as you go through the cards and figure out how best to interact with the environment. So, for example, Geralt has his potions, but he's also got his other cards, which is like gear and different things like that, amulets and stuff that don't, operate like potions do. So you can kind of tech through his deck and just completely ignore the potions altogether, or you can kind of do a little bit of a mixture. Now, the potions require you to take his brew action, which is how you get the activation tokens on the potions to get them to do anything. So the potions don't really do anything until you've taken a brew action to place the tokens on there. And a lot of the other characters work the same way. So Yarpen will activate his his band of dwarves to get tokens out, and then Triss will spend money and you can get tokens out that way. So each character kind of has a little bit slightly different flavor. I mean, it's not, you don't have to really plan strategically, but as you play the decks, you can kind of sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to try it and just do all potions this time or whatnot. But as those cards come up, because you get dealt two and choose one, you're kind of forced down a path a little bit. So there's a nice little balance there. And it's something that actually is very hard to explain, but I would recommend that players give each character a few tries, because as I had played this on the app before, Geralt seemed to me like there wasn't really a lot of interesting choices whenever I was doing a development action. But now that I've sat down and played it a little bit more in the app and then also here in person, I've seen like, oh, there's a little bit more to this guy. So it's kind of the same with everybody. So like I said, for Geralt's special ability, he's got this brew action, and you can place one action token on each of your potion development cards. Each of the characters has a special ability like this. Now, Triss has an action called Prepare, which is place one action token on one of your spell development cards. Her spell development cards tend to be a little bit more powerful in isolation, but again, you can't populate all of them at once with activation tokens. Dandelion has Sing, which just gives him 2 gold pieces, and he can spend gold pieces to activate and sort of employ some of his friend cards, or you can even spend the tokens just to get straight up lead tokens. And then Yarpen's special ability is you can use up to 2 of your companion cards. And here we can see there's 4 companions. These do different things. For example, this one allows you to convert lead tokens from one color into another one. You can get some money. You can place activation tokens on your cards, etc. Now, the other interesting thing about Yarpen is he has 2 wound slots that are off of his main action, so you can kind of eat up these 2 wounds before having to start slowing yourself down and covering up actions. And he also has a little bit more chance for success on his special action die, and he can choose from one of 2 different quest decks. Now, of course, the last thing you can do is you can rest, and you can actually remove up to 2 wounds or 1 severe wound from your hero sheet. Now, once you've taken your 2 actions, you're going to look and see what region you're in, and then see if there's any encounters that you have to deal with. So in this case, if we were in the region we showed you earlier, you have your choice of dealing with either a silver monster, a bronze monster, or dealing with a foul fate card. Sometimes these monsters will be face up. Maybe somebody fought them earlier and they didn't win, but you have to choose to resolve one of these at the end of your turn. If there's no encounters present in your region, then you go ahead and move the counter along the war track, adding whatever is depicted on the space it moved to. So in this case, we would actually add a bronze monster to that region. So let's take a look at a gold monster here, and these are the hardest in the game. There's a couple of things to note here. First, you can see that we need 4 attack to defeat the monster, but you can see we also need to roll 3 defense to prevent something nasty from happening to us. Now you can see this one has an especially nasty effect. Before rolling, we're going to place 1 foul fate token in an adjacent region, and then if we are successful on the attack, we're going to receive 2 victory points. However, if we fail the defensive roll, no matter if we're successful or not on the attack, each hero is going to suffer 1 foul fate token. Now let's throw out an example roll here for Geralt. He's got his 3 white combat dice, then he has 3 special red dice that only he has access to. Now you can see here we actually already rolled 5 attack because in the die in the upper left hand corner has 2 swords on it, which brings us up to a total of 5. However, we've only rolled 1 shield, so we may have to suffer the consequences of our failed defense. However, Geralt has a special icon that he can sometimes roll on his dice, and you might be able to use this to activate one of your development cards. So if we take a look at this heliotrope here, this is a Witcher sign, and once per battle you may spend one of those success icons to have each shield produce an additional shield. Now this still leaves us 1 short of our total of 3 that we need, but perhaps we had the Quen, which says once per battle you may spend one of these to produce 2 shields. In that case we'd be okay. Now this next potion says at the start of battle you may spend 1 activation from this card to produce one of the success icons. Now remember, this is a potion, so previously we would have had to brew and then put an activation on this card. So we don't always necessarily have to roll those success icons, we can kind of build those into our little repertoire here with these potions. And then kind of comboing with that, this Yrden Witcher sign, once per battle you may spend one of those icons to produce this little eyeball thing, and this is helpful in fighting magic, which Geralt is not always very equipped to do. So as I said, each of the characters has, different decks, and you're going to be able to kind of maneuver, because you got to remember, Geralt isn't always just going to be going red all the time. He's not just going to be doing straight up combat, and even some of the harder monsters are going to require, more magic to defeat than necessarily straight brute force combat. All right, so what do I think of this game? Well, this game's actually, I liked it when I first played it, and it's really actually kind of grown on me more and more as I've played it. I would say the best player count is going to be 4. Now the game's going to take a little bit longer that way. The box says 1 to 2 hours, I think. And it's really going to push the 2, maybe 2.5 as people kind of learn the decks, because it's not like there's AP. I don't want to say there's AP, but there are decisions to be made. You're looking at the 2 cards. Okay, well, where do I want to move on the board? I need to do my main quest over here, but if I do this other route here, this is one of my side quests, and maybe I can bump into Triss. I've got this extra purple token, I just need 2 more. I can probably grab one on the way, but if she moves, where's she going? And so maybe we'll pass each other in the night and I won't be able to meet up with her and do the support. So there is some, good stuff to chew on. And also, once you start getting more and more wounds and foul fate tokens on your card, it makes it a little bit trickier. So sometimes you'll spend a turn like, okay, I rest and I develop, and that's all I do. And so my turn's very quick, and then the next guy takes his turn. He's taking not want to say a couple of minutes, but he's taking a little bit longer. But that's like your first play. Then as people kind of learn what everybody does, and you get the hang of it, okay, move, do this, do, you can really get the 2 actions done quickly. Then you're going to come down right around that 2-hour mark, I think, with 4 players. Now, it's okay with 2 players. It becomes like a pure race game at that point, where it kind of feels like the card deal and the luck of the dice kind of determine the victor a little bit that way. Now, the cool thing with more players is you can actually trade the lead tokens, the little spyglasses, and gold. So if you get some extra tokens, you're like, well, I tell you what, if you got to be in the same location, I'll give you this, and you give me some gold, and Billy over there, he's winning. So we're going to trade a little bit and help each other out and try to catch up. So with a 2-player game, you can have some really cool tight games. I've had tight games with 2-player, but you can also have like a kind of a runaway leader thing. It just the luck of the draw. But with 4 players, you can kind of negotiate a little bit and get in there and do that stuff. And it feels a little bit more thematic somehow to me with more players, because people are kind of reading the quests a little bit more in general. Whereas I don't know, something about the dynamic with 2 players that doesn't seem to happen as much. So I would play this, but it's interesting to me. It almost feels kind of, I don't know, Elder Signy, sort of the way the combat work. We're kind of trying to plug in and match icons, and you can spend tokens and actions to help with the mitigation of the die rolls. But on the other hand, it reminds me a lot of like a Talisman or a Relic. Now, I don't own Talisman. I played Talisman, and I don't really like that game at all. Relic is a little bit more interesting to me. I think I get into the theme of Relic a little bit more, and I don't know, funny, I've probably matured enough as a gamer that I played enough Euro games that I can deal with some games that are like almost zero strategy and just kind of spitballing for fun. This kind of fits in a weird medium spot, and I have a feeling this is going to sort of give the game kind of a weird black eye. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how this game is received in general by people in general, because at the end of the day, now I've played this several times, it really feels like a kind of like a talisman or a relic, where you kind of sit and you relax and you kind of go through the adventure. But the thing is, here's the one thing, it's not as chaotic as a talisman or a relic. But that also kind of removes from it a little bit of the hilariousness of those two games. Like I said, it kind of pulls the drama out a little bit. But on the other hand, the drama kind of comes in a different way, because you really feel like you're kind of optimizing a little bit this race to, victory points, which is kind of how Relic and Talisman feel. You're racing along, but the thing with that is you can be cruising right along and you just get hammered, and you like die basically in Relic, and you have to start over. It's even worse in Talisman, but this doesn't have that. I mean, you can take a beat down and start losing victory points, but that's rare. I'm trying to think. I've seen it happen once. I think it was in a 2-player game, but it was just like, we were playing, okay, you can play in the app, and you can play just to one quest card, and so we were really like pushing our luck one time, and so that was just kind of an outlier. I would say I kind of do like playing it to one quest. It's not in the rules for the board game, but it is in the app. So that's kind of a quick like half-hour, 40-minute filler, where if you've played the game a lot, then I would say you could probably play it that way and really enjoy it, because if you and a couple other people have, just a few minutes, less than an hour, and you really know the cards and the decks and everything, you can really play quickly, and you can kind of play a little bit differently, a little more seat of your pants. But I really like the three quest way. I haven't played it with 5. See, that would take a little long. I think that would overstay its welcome, because right as the person's finishing their 3rd quest, that's when I feel like, okay, this game is done, and that it kind of finishes in the right time frame. So I think it's going to fit weird, because it's not super. It's weird because it has this exploration nature to each of the development decks, where you can kind of get to know them, but it's geared towards like a race kind of mindset. So there's that. So anyway, I really enjoy it, and I'm actually, just to tell you where this is sitting at in my collection, because I have Relic and I do enjoy that from time to time. My son actually enjoys Relic, and that's kind of a fun, like, beer and pretzel type of game. And this is the same as well, but I don't know what, like the aesthetic of it is different. I'm trying to figure out what that, some big college word for it, because it's just like the feeling is so different. Like when I'm playing Relic, I feel like you should be serving beer maybe. And then when I'm playing this is more, this is more towards the Euro crowd, but I don't know that the Euro crowd really going to like it that much, because there is some randomness. But there is some exploration here that you can do, again, with the development decks. This is a little bit more, more brainy than the Relic. The Relic's very much happening on the table. You're into sort of the artwork and the components and sort of the laugh out loud sort of stupid characters that are out there. Where this is very much, my wheels are turning, and so there's that sort of different sort of gaze that you have on the board. Where this is Relic, I'm more like into it and laughing, and this I'm kind of watching my opponents and stuff. So yeah, that's a horrible explanation, but just trying to give you the sense of like what it feels like. So my thing is this: I think this one probably needs an expansion or 2 maybe, to really kind of flesh out, maybe get the theme out a little bit more. But other than that, I would say, if you like Relic, you should try this. So anyway, thanks.